Hello, everyone. So this is the Modern Priestess YouTube channel, and today we're going to be talking about the alignment that happens this week, precisely on April 12th, of Jupiter and Neptune joining together in the sky. So this is a once in a 12-year transit, and it's pretty special. It's pretty unique, and so I really wanted to come here and film a video in regards to this energy and explain this energy and a little bit of the history behind it, so that you can have some sort of understanding or context as to what is going on right now, especially on a worldly level, or on a collective level, because Jupiter and Neptune are both two outer planets. They're not personal. So a lot of us will be affected personally by this in a different way, but because these are two outer planets, this is more of a collective concern than of a personal concern. So this is to give you guys context, information on the energies that are going on so that you can understand again, the energy behind that, the context behind that. And also I'm going to give you guys some tips on how you can utilize and use this energy to its fullest whilst it is active. So I hope you enjoy this. Please like the video and subscribe to this channel if you want to have access to more astrology info. But yeah, let's get right into it. So as I mentioned, this is a once in a 12-year transit. And essentially what's happening is that Jupiter is joining Neptune in the sky. They're going to be located at the same degree in the same sign. Now, I do follow the sidereal method of calculation, not tropical. And in sidereal astrology, this is happening in Aquarius and not in Pisces, like a lot of the tropical astrologers are portraying it. And so Jupiter is essentially going to be joining Neptune at, I believe it's 24 degrees of Aquarius in sidereal. So they're going to be joined together. For context, what a conjunction is, which is essentially what is happening. A conjunction happens when two planets join with each other in the sky in the same sign, in the same degree. When two planets join in a conjunction, both of their energies blend together in order to form a new, unique energy that we then feel and experience on a collective or personally. So this is what is happening. Jupiter takes about 12 years to make the full orbit or the full cycle of 12 signs. Neptune is an extremely slow planet. I'm not sure how much time it takes Neptune to make the full circle, but it's very slow moving. And so Jupiter is joining Neptune, it's forming a conjunction with Neptune, and we're going to be experiencing this very unique, very spiritual, very mystical energy, especially on April 12th, because they are coming together on April 12th. But because these are two slower moving planets, you can feel it, 2 weeks before and 2 weeks after. And on the date that I'm filming this, which is April 7th, I'm kind of like a tad bit late to my video, but on April 7th, you can really start feeling this quite potently. I know for myself right now, I am feeling this quite potently right now. So let's first start by describing both of these planets individually so that we can understand their effects when they come together. So Jupiter is the planet of expansion. It's the planet of optimism, abundance, luck, prosperity. But it's essentially important to know that whatever Jupiter touches, it expands. It really is the planet that will expand anything that it is in contact with. Neptune, on the other hand, is the planet of spirituality, mysticism. It's the planet of the interconnectedness between anything and everything in the world. So that's why it is really related to empathy, to compassion, to deep sensitivity, to intuition, to psychic awareness. It is related to anything that is otherworldly. So anything that we cannot see or perceive with our five senses. We're talking of other dimensions, other realms, spirit guides, anything, anything that is otherworldly, that is not very well known in our 3D five sense world. Neptune is also the planet of imagination. It's also the planet of creativity, of art. Neptune is also related to the media. It's related to fantasies, but it's also related to illusion, fantasy. I already said fantasy, but deception. Deception is a quite a good word to describe Neptune, because it really represents portraying a reality that we view in a certain lens, that an aspect of reality that's not necessarily real, because it's portrayed under very specific conditions, and it's portrayed under a specific lens. And so when we speak of Neptune, we speak of photography, we speak of movies, we speak of the media in itself, the news, we speak of social media, because all of these are interpretations of reality that are very, very staged, or that are viewed in a certain lens. And when we think of photography, it's a portrait, or an aspect of reality that is portrayed in a specific lens, right? There's lighting involved, and there is makeup, and we kind of have a setup, and we take the picture in this specific setup, and it looks like reality, but it's not necessarily the true reality. So that's why movies are a big Neptunian thing. Photography, art, music, and all of that. Social media as well is really associated with Neptune. Rose-colored glasses, idealism, fantasy, illusion. It's all Neptunian themes. So Neptune has a very like glamorous aspect to its planet. There's a lot of glamour. There's a lot of, fantasizing and illusion related to Neptune, because it's this ideal picture of life. It's this ideal perception that we can have on life. That's in reality not necessarily true. So that's what Neptune is. But in short, it's a very, very mystical, sensitive, emotional planet that has to do with idealism and fantasy. So when the two join together every 12 years, it's usually a very, very important point. It marks a new cycle of essentially Neptune getting expanded, because as I mentioned earlier, anything that Jupiter touches, it will expand. And so when Jupiter and Neptune join together, Jupiter will essentially expand the energies of Neptune, and we will feel this exponentially. And so all the Neptunian themes are going to be really enlarged and really expanded for the course of about like a month during the course of this transit. And so when Jupiter and Neptune join, we can expect feeling very intuitive. We can expect feeling very, very tuned in, very emotional, very sensitive. It's a time where we feel like it's easier for us to be very compassionate and very empathetic, because we just are able to put ourselves in other people's shoes. We're able to really feel into other people in ways that we usually can't. We usually don't have access to all those energies, all those feelings. So for all of us who are naturally already into spirituality, or are naturally already, let's say, very psychic or very empathetic, you guys are going to be feeling this quite potently, where you're going to be having access to that much more energy and that much more emotions than you usually do. So good side note, it is a good time to just make sure your boundaries are clear and are established, because emotions are going to be running very high. Sensitivity is very high. But it's a great time for anyone that is into any spiritual practice or any mysticism or any occult practice, because this is just going to be themes that are very enlarged and very present in our lives at this moment. It's a time where we can easily gain spiritual insight. We can easily just expand through the exploration of mysticism, of, occultism, exploring astrology, exploring metaphysical topics. All of those are things that could really expand you as a person, that could bring you luck and abundance as well. For artists, for people who practice art, for people who practice music, for people who are painters, for people who are photographers, people who are actors. This can be a very, very, very prominent period for you, where your craft is really, really expanded. and your access to your imagination and your flow of creativity is very prominent as well. So if you're an artist, if you're practicing any kinds of arts, around the 12th of April, it's just, and you know, right now, as I'm filming this, a great time to get into your art because creativity just flows so much easier. You have access to flows of imagination that usually you might not have. So it's a great time for artists right now. You can produce a lot of your really, really, really prominent craft during this time. If we take a look at history and how this alignment has affected us in the past, we've seen a lot, as I talked about earlier, compassion and empathy are really, really emphasized during this time. We've seen that the past Jupiter and Neptune conjunction has brought a lot of new developments in societies or groups that are of a minority. So we've seen a lot of, you know, developments in the women rights movement during a Neptune and Jupiter transit. We've also seen developments in the African American culture and population as well during past Neptune and Jupiter alignments. One of the past Neptune and Jupiter alignments, I can't remember the year, was the year that Barack Obama became the first Black president. And he won a Nobel Prize. So it's usually a time where people can or groups can get a lot of newfound empathy, newfound compassion that is really accorded to them. So it's an interesting time for that. We also see when we look at history that Neptune and Jupiter joining together usually brings a new cycle and an expansion when it comes to certain arts that are related to Neptune. So we've seen a lot of times in past Jupiter and Neptune transits, you know, music bands coming up with music that really revolutionizes the world. The Beatles have had a lot of their musical history associated with this alignment. Also, the last Jupiter and Neptune alignment in 2009 was the year that Avatar came out. And so Avatar was really big because it was this new technology when it came to motion picture. And in Sidereal, this alignment happened in Aquarius, and Aquarius rules technology. And so it's this newfound technology with motion picture that was applied to movies, that might be applied to photography, that might be applied to music or art in general, that are really revolutionized during this time. So it's usually a huge time for pop culture, a huge time for just arts in general, where a new cycle is beginning, a new expansion is happening in these practices. So we can expect that on a collective as well. Upon doing a lot of research, I realized that, you know, although this aspect looks so, you know, dreamy and positive and idealistic, it is associated with a lot of potent war activity as well, because when Jupiter and Neptune join together, we have this empathy or this ability to identify with other people much easier. And sometimes that results in groups being identified with each other in a much stronger way, and especially when we speak of certain nations. And so we see that certain nations may be even more against each other as they overly identify with each other even more, and that sense of nationalism is expanded as we are able to really merge with the people around us, with our communities even more. So we see this Ukraine and Russian activity right now that could be really highlighted with this Jupiter and Neptune conjunction, as people are really joining forces together. So it's kind of like a polar effect, but you know, any astrological event has a polar effect to them anyway. So there's very, very positive and very good possibilities, but there's also possibilities that are more dense and more difficult as well. Upon doing some more research, I found out that in some systems, Neptune is associated with disease. It is associated with illness because of its ability to spread to everything and anything around us. And so we've seen in past Jupiter and Neptune conjunction that a lot of medical expansion or a lot of medical realizations have happened as well. We've seen in one of the last Jupiter and Neptune transits that the AIDS epidemic started and AIDS were discovered. We also saw in another Jupiter-Neptune alignment that the H1N1 pandemic was also declared. So a lot of those sparked reflections on my end as to what this would mean for the C word and if any of it was going to get highlighted again, or if there was some sort of new cycle that was really announced with this issue as well. So we can expect some medical stuff being highlighted as well, especially because this is happening in Aquarius, and Aquarius is a very scientific sign as well. So we could expect this to happen as well. Neptune is also associated to the ocean and water. So unfortunately, there's been times where Jupiter and Neptune have joined together when there has been floods and floodings and issues with water and an overexpansion of water. And so this may be something that we see on a collective level as well. But going back to this alignment happening in Aquarius, Aquarius is the sign of groups and it's the sign of friendships and it's the sign of community and the collective. And so because Jupiter is joining Neptune and is expanding Neptune and its energy, there's a lot of mysticism, a lot of spiritual activity that can happen during this time. And there's been a lot of thought about this alignment really causing mass spiritual awakenings and a lot of new spiritual communities and a lot of newfound mysticism and spiritual knowledge in communities, in groups. So I really think that this alignment is going to bring some sort of new collective awakening when it comes to spirituality and mysticism and occults. So this is pretty exciting. I feel like this has already been going on in the last few years. We've had a lot of transits in the last few years that indicate a lot of people waking up, but this one is just that cherry on top of the cake. People really, really, really coming alive with spirituality and spiritual topics and experiencing, collective spiritual awakening is a big possibility for this transit. I do want to add, I've added earlier that Neptune is associated with the media. We could see this new cycle really begin with media. And I really think that, mainstream media has been really finishing up its course in our realities in the last few years. A lot of people have waken up to their motivation, to their root. And I think that this placement could really emphasize this new cycle when it comes to media and how we share information and new sources of media that come to the surface with this transit, which is really exciting as well. So now that I really went over like the general overview and kind of like the history behind it and the more collective implication of this transit, I want to move on a little bit to how you can utilize this more personally and how you can make use of this very potent time right now. So as I mentioned, Neptune is a very artistic, it's a very artistic planet. It's very linked to music, to arts, fashion, photography. And so at this time, our imaginations are very stimulated. It's very expanded. And so if you're an artist, if you're someone who likes to be creative, if you're someone who works with photography, with fashion, someone who's designing clothes, any source of creative endeavor at this time will be very, very, very fertile or fruitful. As I said, their imaginations are running very easily, they're flowing very easily. And so a good way to make use of this transit is to tap into your creativity. If you're an artist, it's going to be a very potent time and you might produce some of your best work during this time. And this also goes for anyone who's like a writer, for example, anyone who is a content creator on social media. It's just a very potent time to get in your arts and really let your imagination flow. Another way that you can make great use out of this transit, if you ask me, is to build your vision board. We're feeling very idealistic right now. There's a lot of focus on the future and of possibilities that we have of the future and of our idealistic possibilities for the future as well. So using this and using our imaginations, which are very stimulated right now, I would use this time to literally build a vision board. Write about your idealistic end goal, what you want to accomplish, where you want to go. It's much easier for you to tap into your intuition, your feelings about where you want to go, and and build your authentic vision. So I know for myself, I'll be building my first ever like huge vision board with this transit and kind of making it a ceremony. So I would really recommend, if any of you guys have never built a vision board, it's just an amazing time to do that right now. Now, as I mentioned before, Neptune is a very, very intuitive, very psychic, a very sensitive planet. And so with Jupiter expanding it, right now it's just such a good time to tap into your spirituality. It's such a good time to explore the more mystical, more abstract and esoteric world. If you want to get into a new field of study that is more spiritual, if you want to get into yoga, if you want to learn about astrology, if you want to learn about new metaphysical concepts, right now it's just such an amazing time to do that. Just tapping into your soul, tapping into your spiritual self even more. Meditation right now, if you're looking for intuitive advice, if you're looking for advice, let's say from your spirit guides or whatsoever, it's much easier for you right now to tap into that because of this energy being emphasized. Your intuition will be extremely increased as well. So it's just a good time to, first of all, get into spirituality, get into your spiritual practice even more, but also number two, listen to your intuition. It's going to be quite strong. It's going to be giving you really important messages. So I would really be attentive to your intuition and kind of really listen to what it says and take action on your intuition at this time because it's very strong, it's very potent, and it will lead you where you're supposed to go. So listen to your intuition, listen to your feelings, notice what comes up, notice the ideas that you get at this time. Again, it's a great time to just idealize and kind of put your ideas together. It's not a time to really execute a plan yet because we're more in the imaginative, idealistic time. But it's a good time to just put your ideas together, build your vision, like I said earlier. But tap into your intuition, tap into your feelings, and then tap into your spiritual practice and a spiritual knowledge and your spiritual self as well. It's going to feel very abundant to do that. Neptune is a planet of selfless help. It's really the planet of serving humanity. It's the planet of giving to others. So at this time, if you can give to someone else, if you can be of help to someone, it might bring you opportunities. It might bring you blessings because of Jupiter really being in the mix. So, extending yourself to others at this time, being of help to others at this time, if you can, could be very beneficial. So I would really recommend that, if you have a friend that you feel would need some help, would need some advice, if you yourself can donate, if you can donate your time to an organization, it's an amazing time to just be of help to others or just humanity. If you're a spiritual entrepreneur, if you're an energy healer, if you're an astrologer, if you're a guide, a coach, right now people are very receptive to knowledge that is more abstract, that is more spiritual. And so at this time, it's just so amazing for you to get out there, post your knowledge, post your wisdom. Again, people are going to want to be more inclined to learn about mysticism and occultism. And so if you yourself practice this, it's a good time to get into your practice even deeper, but also to put yourself out there and put your knowledge out there, kind of like I'm doing today with this video. Like and subscribe if you haven't already to my channel. But yeah, it's just an amazing time to do that right now. Another thing I want to mention is dreams. Neptune rules dreams. Because its energy is being emphasized, definitely pay attention to your dreams. A lot of messages, a lot of prophetic dreams could be coming to the surface. We could be experiencing that. So definitely pay attention to your dreams. They might be very important at this time too. The final things that I want to say about this is because this is happening in Aquarius, which is a sign of community, it's the sign of friendships and groups. What a good time it is to actually gather with groups in community and have a ceremony together, have a ritual together, or just connect on a more deeper, more spiritual level. You're going to notice that like your connection with people is almost like psychic at this time. You're really tuned into other people and their emotions. So what a good time it is, especially after the last 2 years, really lacking community, probably for most of us, to now get out there and join with people, join with friends, join with community, and connect on a deeper level, connect through deeper things such as spirituality and mysticism, but also just, have a ritual, have a ceremony together, and just, be of help to each other. It's a beautiful time for that. So I highly recommend, if any of you guys are in the position to do that, to do this. Okay, the last thing that I do want to add is, there's two sides to every transit. There's, I guess, the higher vibrational effects that are more, I guess, positive, and the more difficult aspects of this transit, which are also possible. As I mentioned earlier, Neptune is also the planet of illusions, fantasy, but also deception. And it's also, viewing things in with like rose-colored glasses. So it's important at this time, you can be idealistic, you can indulge in your dreams and your fantasies and build your vision, but do keep in mind that it's important to keep a balance and to stay in reality as well, because it's easier for us to really get lost in our fantasies a little bit, to get lost in our ideals, and we might get disappointed later on, or we might get deceived very easily right now at this time if we're already prone. For example, if you're someone who's already prone to deception and to perceiving things in a different light, I would be careful at this time, and I would make sure to stay grounded and to just make sure that you're still having some sort of contact with reality, because it's really easy for deception, for illusion, and for just this over expansion of our idealism. So keep yourself grounded. While you're going through this process of building your vision and building your dreams and your fantasies, keeping an air of detachment, right? This is in Aquarius, the sign of detachment. Keeping an attitude of detachment, also associated with our ability to dream and to think of our ideals, is probably the best right now, because it's possible for us to get super lost in our ideals and overly attached to them, and then just get deceived or disappointed later on. So yeah, keep that in mind during your navigation of this transit. So yeah, that's all I wanted to come here and tell you guys about this Neptune and Jupiter transit. Very mystical time, very intuitive, very psychic, very artistic time. I'm looking forward to seeing what happens on a collective level and for people personally as well. Comment down below if you see this during the time of this transit or even after. Let me know how that was for you and what happened for you. I would love to hear it. Thank you so much for everyone who's watching. Thank you for everyone who is liking and subscribing. And please do so if you haven't already, in order to support me and bringing you guys some more content. So yeah, follow me on Instagram, modern.priestess88. And I'm wishing you guys an amazing week and all the blessings for this transit as well.